guys, my name is Abby and welcome back to a new video. So this is a little different because I thought I filmed the intro to this before I actually made the dress, but I didn't. And I realized as I was taking videos in this dress, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna put it together, and I wanted to see like the introduction, and it didn't exist because I must have like done it in my head and been like, yeah, like, that's what I'm gonna say, but then I never actually recorded it. So we're just going to do it out of order, but that's alright. So at least now I know that it'll go well, which is good. So basically for today's video, probably not a lot of you know, but the very first video I made was around this time of the year. Even though it was a dress for Halloween, I didn't post it until like January, February, because I was that slow with trying to figure out how to like do all the video stuff. And it was to make this dress, but I didn't record it right, and it was very grainy. Nothing about it was very good. So that video is archived. We're not going to open that up again. But I thought, why not do a better introduction of it as like a first year kind of thing, since I've had this channel for a year now. So I go step by step. I have the measurements down, and I tried my best to really explain each step as best as I could, so that way other people can see me make it and make it for themselves. So this is my favorite style of dress to make. I've made it many times. In fact, I probably should stop because I have so many of them, but I just think it's so flattering on not just myself but so many other people, and I just can't stop. Every time I see a pretty fabric, I'm like, oh my god, that dress would look perfect as this dress. It would look perfect. And now I have like so many of them that it's too much. But for Valentine's Day, the silhouette is very nice and beautiful, and it's a perfect, cute little date dress. So I hope you guys watching the video find it easy to follow along. Once again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can put them in the comments, and I will try my best to answer them. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video and see how I made this wonderful dress. I found this lovely Valentine's Day fabric at Hobby Lobby and knew I wanted to make this dress. So as usual, I started off with my bodice, and using my rough sketch as a guide, I sketched out the pieces that I would need and wrote down my measurements, then translated those measurements onto the fabric, adding about an inch for seam allowance. And my family just rescued this new kitten, and he proved to be a menace, as you can see. He was found in a dumpster, which is really depressing, but we're very lucky to have him in our family now, minus the times he tries to stick his paws under my scissors. After I cut out my pieces, I pinned them together, making sure the right sides were together, and then repeated all the same steps to make my lining. I used the same fabric for my lining in case parts of it were seen along the top edge of the bodice when I was wearing it. And then once all the sides were sewn together and connected, with the right sides together again, I connected the tops of the fabric and lining, but made sure I only sewed together the tops of the bodices. Moving on to our puffy sleeve, which is probably the sleeve I make the most. And the good thing is that since it will be gathered, the measurements do not have to be exact, which is why I really like it. So I cut out the sleeve shape following my sketch and the measurements, and then I sergeed around the shoulder part of each sleeve. And then after that, I sewed down the sides and serged them together, so now it actually looked like a sleeve. Using my sketch, I cut out the rectangles that will act as the cuffs, and then I folded them in half, hamburger style, and sewed them down, making it a tube. It's important to cut the rectangle bigger than what your measurement is, because you don't want it to be too tight around your arm and limit your arm movement. And then going back to the base of the sleeve and using a basic running stitch, which essentially is just going in and out of the fabric, I hand gather it down to fit the length of the cuff. And then this next part was kind of hard to show, but I folded in the raw edges of the tube and then inserted in the raw edge of the gathered sleeve, so that way the tube would sandwich in the raw edge and hide it from being visible. I also like to make the back part of the cuff longer than the front, so that way I know I am catching both sides of it as I sew it down onto the sleeve. I sewed down both sides of the tube to give it a nice and pressed look, and then folded down the top edge of the sleeve where I had previously sergered. I made sure to fold it down the same width of the elastic, as this will act as a channel for the elastic to give it that gathered, puffy effect. I used a safety pin and inserted it into one side of the elastic, and then I sewed down both sides of the elastic onto the sleeve to make sure it was nice and secure and wouldn't fall off when I was wearing it. Moving on to my skirt, and using the remaining fabric, I cut along the fold so I would have two large rectangles, and then took one of those rectangles and cut it in half. And now with the large rectangle in the middle, I sewed each small rectangle to either side, having the long one be the skirt front and the smaller ones be the skirt backs. Another important detail is I did cut off the selvage part because I didn't want the white line to show through at anywhere on the dress. The good thing is that since this fabric does have a print on it, the seams of the skirt will not be as visible, so it will look like just one giant rectangle. After sewing and sergering the pieces of the skirts together, I gathered the waist of the skirt using the same running stitch method as I did for the sleeves. You could gather this by the machine, but I feel much more comfortable and confident doing it by hand, although it does take a lot longer. Now this next part looks really weird, but I use this method a lot. I take the gathered skirt and I sew it in between the bodice layers. It's really bulky and it takes a lot of patience and time to sew it on the machine, but once you turn it inside out, the raw edge is hidden in between the layers and it looks so nice and clean. Next, I sergered down the sides of the dress and put in the zipper. How I usually put in zippers is I first measure down how far the zipper will come, and then sew up the back to meet the measurement, starting from the bottom of the skirt. And then once that's all sewn, I fold over the sergered edge to the inside, and then I sew in the zipper, so that way the zipper hides the sergered edge. And then after this, the back of the dress is complete. Some people don't like the stitching of their zipper to show, but I personally think it's a cute little added detail. I then top stitched down the top of the bodice and then added on the sleeves to the bodice, making them as symmetrical as possible. I took the part of the sleeve that did not have the elastic channel and sewed it right onto the bodice. And the good thing is that the sleeve will hide the stitching from being visible, so it kind of just looks like it's always been there. I then did my usual rolled hem along the bottom raw edge of the skirt, and then I felt like it was missing something, so I found this glittery lips button and scrunched down the front of my dress and hand stitched it on, and then bam, the dress was complete.